Welcome to the How to Adult podcast, where we learn all things adulting. My name is Travis Walker, and I will be your host. Today's topic is all about creating your individual mission, values, and vision for your life. This was a really incredible episode. We dive deep into this topic, so get excited and buckle up because we are about to learn how to adult. We are back for another episode of How to Adult, and we've got a very special friend of mine. Nathaniel is here. What's going on, Nathaniel?
What's up, Travis? It's good to be with you.
Yes. I'm so glad that you're here. Nathaniel is a fraternity brother of mine. However, we were not part of the same chapter. What chapter were you a part of?
Theta Psi at Shorter University up in Northwest Georgia.
Northwest Georgia. So we're both in the South. So we
Yeah, we're
basically
southern.
had the same experience. Uh, well, that's awesome. That's awesome. Well, I am really excited about this topic because this is something I've actually been internally wrestling with for a
Mm.
while now. So I'm hoping that I get to learn something from you, and the listeners always get to learn something. So um, they just get a good spot that way. So we're going to be talking about our individual, our personal values, mission, and vision. And I've really been wrestling with this because I've been trying to identify my core pillars or my values. I call them pillars.
Yeah.
And I've identified one, but every time I come up with another one, I'm like, that's the same thing. So,
Mm.
anyways, I've been wrestling with this. I'm excited to learn from you because you've been really diving deep into this. But to give the listeners a better idea of who you are, can you give us an idea of who you are, your background, and kind of what you're currently working on? Because I'm really excited about it.
Yeah, so my name is Nathaniel Gadasic. I am an independent professional development coach and consultant. So I'm an International Coach Federation Associate Certified Coach. It's kind of a mouthful, but I've got professional coach training, and I'm a Scrum Master as well, which is fun for organizations. So my current work is focusing on developing young professionals, both personally and professionally, and helping build agile organizations. So doing some consulting with organizations.
That's awesome. That's awesome. I've done a little bit of education on the Scrum stuff. So I know what you're talking about, which is exciting. I don't always get to know what people are talking about. But what excited you most? What is your fascination with this idea of individuals having or identifying their values, missions, and visions? This is something that is very common in organizations. If you work for an organization, they probably have a mission, they probably have a vision, and they most likely have values as well. We don't talk about it as much with individuals, right? So what
Yeah.
sparked this fascination with this conversation that we're having today?
Yeah. So I was exposed to this idea of mission, vision, and values pretty early on as I was an intern for my mentor, who was at that time consulting nonprofits who had mission, vision, values
Right.
that were established and important for the organization. And part of my personal and professional development was actually doing that work for myself in what is called a life plan or doing life design. So
Okay.
it's really sitting down and applying these concepts that help businesses to be successful, applying that to my own life. And so um, I established my own values, crafted statements that captured who I want to be and what I feel like I'm called to do. And it is a process, so I've reworked it several times over the last couple of years as things get clearer, as life changes. Um, but I've just really seen a lot of power and a lot of clarity come when people do this work for themselves. And so
Mhm.
as I stepped into facilitating and coaching leaders and teams, thinking about this became just part of my daily work. I was helping people do this day in and day out. And talking about values in particular is one of my favorite leadership development topics because it can really craft a culture. It can really simplify decisions, and it's often the easiest place to start
Right.
because our values are often more clear, and it's easier to get clarity on a handful of words as opposed to trying to come up with a big statement.
Yeah, I totally buy all of that. And everything that you just said kind of leads into my next question of I think it's easier said than done in the sense of,
Yeah.
let's talk about the challenges of forming these things because I don't think it's easy. Like I said at the beginning of this show, I've been wrestling for this for a while, and I've only come up with one with
Yeah,
one core pillar. Um, so what should we keep in mind, or kind of the process we should think about when we're trying to form these things? We've decided that we care, right? We
yeah.
care about forming these things. We think that there's value in it, and then we want to start forming it and figuring the thing out. What should we think about?
Yeah, it is hard, and people want clarity, and they want to live a fulfilling life. They want to make decisions, good decisions for them. The problem is that we usually don't have a framework for doing any of that, and so
Right.
it does take time and effort, and usually it takes help.
Hmm.
Either that's a community or a coach or both to come alongside you and help you do this work. And like I said, my experience, values is the easiest place to start. There's actually a great values assessment that's free that you can take online that helps you really just you do the work for 5 or 10 minutes, and at the end it tells you, hey, according to this assessment, these are your top values. And so you can get that done really fast. But then it becomes a work of reflecting on, how do I see those values show up in my daily life? How does it work in making decisions, in the way that I approach work and relationships, and the things that I do? Um, and so the vision piece is usually the next place that I would go, which
Right.
is thinking about, what do you want to see in your life? Vision really for me is, what do you want to be? Who do you want to be? Um, you know, thinking about your legacy all the way to the end of your life, when people are sharing at your memorial service, like, what do you want them to say about you? What's your vision for your life? And then the mission is the doing, is what do I want to do that's going to help me fulfill that vision and help me
Hmm.
see what I want to see and be who I want to be. Um, yeah, it's a process. You have to work at it, and most people again can't really do it on their own. And it helps to have somebody ask good questions, good powerful questions, and come alongside you as you do this work.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good. Let's do this for a moment. Like I said,
Sure.
I figured out one, right?
Yeah.
And so I'm going to share it with you, and you can kind of give me your response, and then we'll keep going in the show. So
Sure.
what
Yeah.
I've identified as one of my core values or core pillars is that I am a sharer. A lot of the things that I do is because I am passionate about sharing. When I started my career, I was a teacher. I wanted to share knowledge. I wanted to share life experience. I wanted to help kids progress into the next form of whatever they were going to become, right? And then I started the podcast because I was surrounded around people that were doing incredible things, and I wanted to be part of sharing their story so that someone else out there would be able to develop and achieve the things that they wanted to achieve. And so through that reflection of like my career and what I'm doing, and also my side projects of the podcast, I've identified that sharing is one of my core pillars. How do you react to that? How do you respond?
Yeah. I hear generosity in there,
Okay.
and um, maybe even like support.
Yeah.
So you're being generous. You don't want to just hold all of these good things to yourself, but you do want to share them, and be generous with them. Um, if you're trying to build more pillars, um, you can really build off of that. If that's the focus, if that's your main place, what are other things that are really important to you as you're sharing?
That's a good question. Um, I find a tremendous amount of value when I actually get to see the outcome, right?
Mm,
That's why teaching was so good for me. It was like I see the direct impact of my sharing. It's happening right in front of me.
yeah.
Um, the podcast is a little bit harder, right? I'm producing these podcasts, and the only really way that I can see that is if the numbers come through, if people listen and watch. And so it's a little bit harder with the podcast, but I've through encouragement of people saying, "Hey, keep doing this. Hey, this is really good. Hey, I
Mm,
really like the content that you're pushing." That's kind of what I get from that. Is that helpful?
yeah. Um, I wouldn't want to decide on what your values are for you, but
That's fine.
in hearing that, um, it stands out to me that you want to be part of community and be
Yeah.
like connected to those that you're sharing with. So um, yeah, you've got that. I like your language of pillars because you think about pillars in architecture. You know, you build things on top of the pillars. You know, the pillars are the big supports. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, it sounds like you have a decent amount of clarity, but getting down to okay, what does that look like in the vision, and how does that inform what you do? That's kind of the next step.
Right, right. And so that's kind of my next thought process. And we're starting to think about vision. We've got some core values down. We've got an idea of where we're headed. As you said, the next step is vision. How should we approach forming that vision? And what I'm particularly interested in is, what do you think unlocks when you have a good vision statement, or you have a good understanding of what your vision is? What do you think unlocks for you?
Mm. Yeah, I think the number one piece for me is just that idea of clarity.
Mhm.
That I just have absolute clarity, often of things that are not me. So,
Right.
um, the things that don't fit in my vision, sometimes that's really the place to start is, if you're struggling to figure out, "Man, there's a million options of who could I be?" It's really an infinite amount of directions I could go. Sometimes you gotta start with what do I know I don't want to be? Um,
Wow.
what do I know that I don't want to, be practicing, that I don't wanna be known for? Um, and so, yeah, I think it really gives clarity, and I see um, the values themselves, if you have a list of values words, I see them as a filter that you can start to filter your decisions through. And so you can, if you kind of have a set of choices, am I gonna take this job, or am I gonna stay in the job that I'm in, or am I choosing between 2 jobs?
Mhm.
Um, I can go through and look at each situation and filter them through my values. And it's not foolproof, but it is a better decision making framework than just I'm going to pick one and hope it works out, um, which is
Yeah.
often how we walk through life. If we don't have a vision, if we don't have any values, we're just guessing all the time, and we can't really walk into decisions with a lot of confidence.
Yeah, so that's very interesting. So, because I think a lot of adults and a lot of people, are constantly put in a place of, oh shoot, this is a fork in the road.
Hmm.
I've got to make a decision. I've got to go this way. I've got to go that way. And what you're saying is that you can make a more informed decision if you know what your values are. How does this decision, road A, let's call it, how does road A fit into me being a sharer or me being
Mm,
generous, right? Am I still going to be able to be generous? If the answer is no, well, let's look at B.
yeah.
Am I going to be able to be generous on road B? Yes. Okay. Wow. Okay. That becomes even more clear. So is that kind of the decision making that you're speaking of?
Yeah, 100%. Yeah, you're nailing it exactly. What you can see, and it's not always crystal clear, but it's way clearer if you already have these values established. You have a framework to start looking at. Okay, if my vision is so for me, I reestablished my vision last year, and I want to be an advocate and empower human flourishing.
I
And
love that.
so as I'm working toward this idea of human flourishing, if I am entering into a job where I'm pushing prescription drugs, like I'm selling prescription drugs, like some of
Okay.
that could be good, but if I know there's an epidemic, that doesn't speak to human flourishing to me. Or if
Sure.
I'm
Okay.
selling, if I'm maybe in a restaurant, in a fast food restaurant, and um, I want to be about healthy people, but I'm giving people fries every day. Um, that's that's not speaking to my heart and my vision of human flourishing. I love some good fries, but I want them in moderation. And so it really does that vision starts to make things clearer. and starts to illuminate the path that makes more sense for us, that's more aligned with who we are. I mean, it doesn't mean that it's a wrong path just for everyone, that it's bad, that it's evil, but it's not for me. And
Right.
that's the key, is getting that clarity on who do I want to be, and as I make life choices, how am I working toward that, or am I actually making a decision that's taking me a step away from where I want to be?
Oh, that's so good. That's so good because it helps us figure out, okay, it helps us mark things off the list, which is
Mm,
super hard for people. They
yeah,
wanna, everybody wants to be everything. But that's not exactly how it works. And I like how you started with, I'm deciding what I'm not, or, what I don't wanna be. I think that another, maybe a helpful tip, and I'm not an expert in this work, so correct me, crack the
sure.
whip if I'm wrong, um, is what am I not currently? Because your vision is
Mm,
something that you are not currently, in
right.
my understanding. And so you've also got to say, if you start forming your vision statement, is this something that I am not now? And if it's
Yeah.
something that you're not now, then you're on the right track because it's your vision. You got to get there.
Yeah.
How do you respond to that? What do you think?
Yeah, I would actually say that, so the language I would use is, you want your vision to be somewhat aspirational.
Yeah.
So you want it to be authentic and you want it to be realistic, but you also want it to be slightly out of reach. And when I think about a vision, especially with organizations, we're talking about things that are timeless and
Yeah.
things that are constant. And so, um, if I want to be, so Chick-fil-A, for example, I work with a lot of people in the Chick-fil-A world. Their
Yeah.
vision is to be the world's most caring company.
Wow.
And they might get there. They have metrics. I'm confident that they will get there. But once they're there, they have to stay there and they have to keep doing things that maintain that we are the world's most caring company. And so if I have a vision for my life to be whatever it is, it's got to be something that's a constant pursuit. Because if I just say, um, I want to be a responsible, even that, if I want to be a responsible adult and leader, that's something that I have to always be practicing.
Right.
And so it does need to be aspirational, and it needs to be something that we can never accomplish. It's not, the vision is not necessarily a goal that we check off and then we move on. It's something that we're always working towards.
Yeah. Yeah, I love that. I love that. And you mentioned earlier, so we talked about the core values. I actually skipped over mission and went straight to vision because I was excited about it.
Yeah.
And so, but you talked about mission being the pathway to get to the vision, right?
Mm,
So
yeah.
let's talk about mission a little bit, in the sense of how should we be thinking about mission? And like, to me, this is like, if in an action movie, right, the ending is the vision, right? This is the mission, is the shootout, if
Mm,
you will.
yeah.
And
It's where the hard work happens.
it's where the work is happening, and
Yeah.
complete I could be wrong on that completely, so correct me. But, how should we be thinking about mission and forming a mission to achieve that vision?
Yeah. So the order of operations for me, as I'm thinking about helping someone develop this, is I would start with the values, because it is the easiest place to start getting some momentum. And when you have values, things start to become clearer automatically. It's a great, huge first step. And then I would talk about vision. Who do I want to be
Yeah,
when I work, when I play, when I am with my family, when I'm just living my life? Who do I want to be? And that's going to be timeless. That's going to be something that applies everywhere. And then the last place I would go is, what do I want to do? What
yeah,
are the things that I feel like I'm called to do? And really, you can build your mission from your values. That's actually something that I've done and seen really work, is use your values to inform what it is that you're going to do. Um, and I want my vision, and I would encourage others to have their mission to really apply, not just in their career, not just in their family life, but across all areas of their life, so that it's consistent, and so that they're constantly working toward whatever that mission is. So it is the doing, and practicing. What is the work? What is the passion that I'm doing? So for you, even as you're sharing, your mission could be to share practical, helpful information that empowers young people, or something like that. And
Yeah.
you can build that active uh, mission statement.
I love that. I love that. And so what you're saying is that it's got to be somewhat broad because it should apply to multiple aspects of life, which I think is really good advice. And it makes me think of something that I've talked about on a previous episode, but so many people identify themselves with their job, with their work, right?
Right.
And teachers are the worst at this. Who are you? I'm a teacher. Well, no, you're not. Your job is to be a teacher. Who are
Mm,
you? Right.
exactly.
And so and in that scope of, we identify ourselves with our jobs, how should we be careful in forming our values and forming our mission or our vision? Even the example I gave earlier was through my first job, right? And so how
Mm,
should
yeah.
we be careful about that?
Yeah. This is our life vision and our life
Yeah.
mission and our life values. And so for many of us, career is a big part of our life. For It's a lot of hours, it's a lot of years that we spend in our career, and we do find passion and purpose and motivation and excitement in our career, and we should, and those are all good things. Um, but you don't want to build this incredible career vision and abuse any other part of your life. And so,
Mhm.
um, I don't want to be the um, most effective, powerful political advisor in the United States of America, but then also have like no family life,
Right.
no physical, mental health. So I want my vision and my mission to be holistic to me. And so you want to find what's kind of the overlap, where do these things intersect? So when I'm not a teacher, when I'm not at work, when I'm not at school teaching, what do I want to be true of me? How do I want to spend my time? How do I want to be known? That might start to show. That's the intersection of where my mission and my vision may really show up, is how do I spend my time outside of work, and what's the overlap? How do those things align and connect?
That's really good. And it makes me think of, as a podcaster, I obviously consume a lot of podcasts. And one
Sure,
of
yeah.
them is a Better Life with Brandon Turner. And I would say, based on the words that he's saying and filtering it into the conversation that we're having here, his vision is to give $1 billion to stop human trafficking.
Mm.
His mission is he's going to become a real estate mogul, real estate investor to get that $1 billion to give, right? And I don't know what his values are, uh, but in that application of my thought and what you're saying, does that align?
Sure. And I wanted to mention that the framework that I recommend, the framework we're going to use in our coaching group, um, that we're launching in May, is not the framework. It's not the way to do it. And so there's a ton of different resources and different ways that people do this work. And so the fact that he has that clarity and he's laser focused on that totally makes sense. I would
Yeah,
venture, if you wanted to fit his what he's talking about into the framework, um, that I'm
please.
using, his vision probably would be something to the effect of to see human trafficking human trafficking eradicated in my lifetime, or something like that. So
Hmm.
just using that language of to see this, and then maybe
Yeah,
to even to be, and maybe he wants to add to be, on the front lines of that work, or whatever, um, his passion, his heart is. And then the mission would be, yeah, to do the real estate, to get the funding, to fund the work, to fund the fight.
yeah.
And then, yeah, I don't know what his values would be, um, but it sounds like he's got that clarity. He's working toward that, which is an amazing mission, and I'm sure he's really fired up about it.
Yeah, well, he's a multimillionaire, so that definitely
That
makes
helps.
sense.
Yeah.
Definitely makes sense of why he would have so much clarity in his life.
Yeah,
So you mentioned at the beginning of the show, and this is the last question I'm going to ask you, but you mentioned that you had redeveloped yours
yeah,
in 2021. And so as we develop and grow as people, I'm curious what changes, what stays the same, how should we adjust? Is this a 5-year plan? Is this is this a 10-year plan? But it is also a life mission. So how should we think about all those things? Because we develop and grow as people.
right.
And these things that we're talking about are supposed to be giving us clarity and almost railroad tracks, if you will, to our life. So how should we think about that?
Yeah. So if you do the work, if you do the hard work now, and you get this clarity, you've got a vision, you have a mission, you have your values established. Um, the idea, the hope, is that they don't change very much, but probably about every 3 to 5 years, you might reevaluate and see what has changed and how might I want to rephrase some of these statements or adjust them based on the way life is changing, based on new experiences I've had, new things that I've learned about myself. There's a really great team at Stanford that created something called Design Your Life. And I've been doing some research on them and looking at their tools. And they recommend, you just use these tools and these frameworks whenever you need them. And
Yeah,
so we don't want to have, every year come, come New Year's, New Year, new me, that my life vision changes. That's probably not either. We're probably not doing the work well enough because it's not going deep enough, or
yeah,
um, we're changing too much. But you also don't want to pigeonhole yourself into, well, I set this vision 5 years ago, it doesn't seem very authentic now, but I can't give up on it because that was my vision. And so we want to be flexible and open to allow life to happen and allow ourselves to grow. Um, I have done the values work for the longest, but a couple years ago, I had an experience that was kind of painful and it revealed to me that I was missing a value, and it actually um, bumped into my top spot in my values.
wow,
My values are force ranked, and so my values have a ranking. Um, and I just had missed this one somehow. But through life experience and some reflection, I was able to say, you know what? Actually, there is this underlying value that's so important to me that needs to be on my list, and
yeah,
that's become my filter for decisions. Um, and I don't foresee my values changing very much over time. But the vision may adjust as I get more clarity. And I would
right,
encourage others to do the same. Is if your vision changes, it's because you're even more clear and it's even more specific.
definitely, definitely. You said that you have 4. Are you willing to share your 4?
Yeah, actually, I have five. I have
Oh, 5. Okay,
five values. So wisdom,
okay,
growth, adventure, influence, which I used to call relationships, but realized that influence is a better word
yeah,
for me, and then stewardship. And
wow,
so as I'm filtering through decisions, I'm looking at, okay, is this a wise decision? What would wisdom say about this? Is this going to help me to grow? How is adventure baked into this
yeah,
choice? Um, do I have influence? Is it growing my influence? Am I using my influence? And then what do I need to steward? What am I stewarding? Am I stewarding time, money, and how am I stewarding it in this situation? And so it has been a great um, compass guide for me throughout life as I've been making work and life decisions. Um, and I encourage others to establish their own and have that for themselves.
yeah, yeah, that's incredible. But before we get into that final piece of advice, I'd love for you to talk about the workshop that you're doing. I've seen quite a bit of content about it. It looks really interesting and really exciting. So, can you tell me a little bit about it before we get into that final piece of advice?
Yeah, so I have partnered up with an amazing coach. Her name is Elise Moore at Bridge Coaching, and we are collaborating on an 8 week group coaching experience for young professionals to do this life planning work in community. And so we're providing the framework, we're providing the support, we're providing the resources, and we're going to get together. And over 8 weeks, you're going to be able to walk away with all of this clarity and the ability to communicate your story, your values, your mission in job interviews, in relationships, in just everyday life. You're going to be able to be more clear on who you are. And so it's called Align. It starts on May 21st,
Okay.
and spots are filling. And so we might actually have um, another group that's going to launch. So we'll have actually two groups going on at the same time. Um, and if people are interested, and maybe now's not the time, I'm pretty confident we're going to do these regularly as people need it. And so um, we can put a link somewhere, and people can connect with me on LinkedIn as well, just if they have questions and are interested.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's incredible, and I'm glad that spots are filling up and that it's, coming to fruition. I love people's dreams coming true. That's really awesome. Well, what's that final piece of advice for those, for everybody out there that's considering this work or, has done this work and is trying to utilize it effectively? What's that final piece of advice?
Yeah. So I love your podcast. I love your content. How to adult. Adulting is hard. Um, And my final piece of advice is just very simple. It's don't wait to do this.
Yeah.
I spoke to an executive coach recently. So he's working with C-suite executives. They're in their late 40s, their 50s, maybe their 60s. And he shared with me that over 30% of his clients changed jobs within 6 months of working with him. And he said that's not
Interesting.
something that he's working toward, but you get to this high level, and some of these people are just taking a look at their life, and they're sitting with some of these questions, and he's asking them, where do they want to be, and who are they? And they just start to look around and realize, man, I have built this kingdom around me. I've built this life that just does not resonate with me. That is not authentic to who I am. And then they make radical changes. And
Yeah.
my passion and my belief is that, what if those leaders had done that work 15 years earlier, 20 years earlier? And I'm 100% confident that had they done that work in their 20s, would actually be more successful than they are today,
Yeah.
because they would have had that clarity, because they would have been operating in their sweet spot, and they would have been building a life based on a vision that made sense and that was connected to them. And so, yeah, my final advice is, do not wait to do this. There's some great books and resources. You can jump into our coaching. There's a lot of great coaches out there that can help you do this work, but don't wait.
That's powerful. I love that, man, and I can only imagine, what those guys would be capable of if they did that work earlier. That's so
Yeah.
good. Well, if people wanna learn more about you or more about the work that you're doing, where should they go? You mentioned LinkedIn.
Yeah, LinkedIn is a great place. That's kind of my central place. Instagram as well. My last name is Gadosik, Gaydosik, and you can go on the social media and connect with me there. And I'd love to connect with people and hear how this is impacting you, and hear what vision you have for your life. I'd love to talk about it and encourage you along the way.
That's incredible. That's incredible. Well, go check out Nathaniel and all the work that he's doing. It's really exciting stuff. I've been seeing it pop up more and more, so I'm really excited to watch this whole thing unfold. It's really exciting. Thank you so much to Nathaniel for coming on the show and helping us all learn how to adult. To stay up to date on all things how to adult, make sure that you follow at how to adult TW on Instagram and Facebook. And remember, we're going to learn how to adult together. See you next time.